Joe talked to the owner of the block, and he said to just do whatever we think it needs. I don't think he really wanted to go through the trouble of I don't know how long it'd take to get a torque plate with that bore size and all of that, but I think we're going to be fine. A year or so ago, I had a guy come in with a Pro Mod 572 Hemi, and he wanted me to hone it for him. But it had half-inch head bolts, so I had to remount the holes in my torque plate for the half-inch head bolts. And then he later brought me another. These are built in aluminum blocks. And this one had 9/16 head bolts on the center row. So I had to ream the torque plate out again, make new spacers and all that. And then I had to do a block for myself, a regular 426 Hemi block. And when I put the torque plate on there, and I torqued it down, well, there wasn't enough material left in these holes where I went to 9/16, and it crushed the material that was left and ruined my torque plate, and worse yet, ruined a set of head bolts because it bent the head bolts when I was torquing them down, and there was no support there, and that the spacer gave way and bent the head bolts, and very depressing. So at that point there was nothing I could do but hone it without the torque plate. So I did, and after I built the motor and warmed it up, I thought, well, I'll just do a leak down. So I shut it off and did a leak down, and you know how it spreads, the torque plate spreads it out, you know. So anyway, I did the leak down, and it had 0%. So I was very happy. But we know that the whole purpose of going through all of this trouble is to try to do the best you can, and but it turned out fine. And this block is so much stronger. You saw how little it flexed with the torque plate. So I'm happy, he's happy, and we can get it all done. So all I really have left to do to this is hone it and run the profilometer in there, get the profile right where it looks, chase the numbers that we want. And Joe wanted me to just check the decks for some reason, make sure that they were flat. He probably doesn't have what he needs for that. So about the thinnest feeler gauge in a regular kit is 1/1000, which is good enough to do this job, but I got this 1/1000 from Starrett, so it just makes it a little harder to pass, you know. And you don't really do anything checking this. It's just check at a couple of different angles. You know how some blocks, like a small block Chevy, you know, sometimes these ends fall off and the gap's so deep you can drive a car through here, right here. I mean, it's terrible. But this one is fine. I mean, I checked it a while ago, but you know how sometimes this sinks down a little. But no, it's all good. Then you check it across the top. You're just trying to check all the angles. But it looks good. So I'll get set up for the hone and we'll get something done. By the way, I talked to the guy at Ross Pistons, real helpful guy. Didn't try to rush me through. He spent all the time he wanted to with me, and I gave him the numbers on the piston, and he pulled up the sheet, told me everything about them. I asked him about the instructions that said 8 to 9 thousandths, and he said, no, you've got plenty of clearance, just hone it at least you can, and get the finish you want, and you'll be fine. So that's fine with me. This is the tool you set for your bore size. You have 2 guides and you have 2 shoes, and you have to set them for every different size cylinder. The last one I did, I forgot what the bore was. Must have been 400 or 500, because looks like we're going to need a few shims here to tighten this thing up. But so that's the plan, is just to remove the minimum and get the finish like we want. I'll play with each cylinder until you and I have never honed a Bulldog block. We don't know the material. We don't know if it's soft or hard or whatever. I think most of these late model aftermarket blocks are made out of pretty good stuff, and so I'm going to assume it's a little hard, like maybe a Cali's or a World or something, and so I'll go with that plan. Try some soft stones for a hard block, and then put the plateau on it and try to check it with profilometer and see where we're at. And then once we establish what it's going to take, then I can do the rest of the cylinders. But just got to practice first. Okay, I think I'm happy with these numbers. I thought the RK was a little high, and so I thought about making one more stroke with the plateau. So I tried that on this cylinder, and it made the other numbers bad. So I think this is the RA's good, the RVK's good. So I think this is going to be a good thing. These things were so smooth, I thought I was going to have to really spend a lot of time trying to rough it, but everything turned out fine. I only lost a couple of tenths trying to rough it up enough to get some RVK in this thing. RK46. Now, that Total Seal says between 30 and 50, but Dick Maskin said low 30s, and that's what I try to hit. But, so that's the only number that's too high. RPK's in line. RVK 56, that's wonderful. They want 50 minimum. RA 19, that's fine. So, everything's wonderful. When I gave it an extra stroke, this came out too smooth. So, now that we know what we want to do, I'll just do the rest of the cylinders. Now this is some of the rust that had Joe so upset, and normally this wouldn't be a problem because you're normally honing out 5 thousandths or whatever, and the hone would clean that out, and everybody's fine with it. But in this particular situation, where we're trying to just rough the cylinders enough to get some RVK, the depth of the valleys that hold the oil, we're trying to hone the minimum. So what I'm going to do is chemically remove that rust. There's a couple of spots over there too. But this is above the ringland. It's not going to hurt anything, but we got to do it the right way. I'm going to chemically remove that, and then we can do our honing process as normal. But there's no damage done there because that's above the top ring anyway. And then I will call Joe and tell him I'll text him because, he's constantly on the phone or working. I'll text him and tell him, come and get it. As I was finishing up the plateau honing on the block, I noticed that the stones were getting chipped, and that just happens to these stones. These particular variety, they chip off the back. But this is the leading edge. It didn't hurt anything, but you want to replace them. But the problem is when you're doing your finishing hone, you're working in, it's not tenths, I don't know what you call it, millionths. You're trying to knock the peaks off. It's, you can't change stones. You're married to the stones till you finish the block. So now that I'm done with the block, I need to change the stones out. You don't need to know all this, but I just thought I'd show you since I've got to do it anyway. The reason you can't change stones when you're finishing the very end like that is, notice how this stone is flat on the top. Well, if you tried to stick that in a cylinder, obviously you're only going to be touching here and here, and you're setting your pressure on the load meter, and the way you're doing everything is based on a stone that has the curvature of the cylinder. So if you tried to set the pressure with only these two corners touching, well, I mean, I don't know what it'd do. It'd probably fracture it like that. It'd probably fracture it because it's not right. And I don't know what would happen if you set the pressure to the same value as when you're using the whole face of it. Anyway, it wouldn't work. You're not going to try it. So you're married to them till you get done. Then the next time you've got a block in there that's, close to the finished size, then you'll put it in there and just run these. At this point, you're just playing. You got 3,000ths to go or whatever. It doesn't matter what you do there. So you stroke it for a little while, and then you'll raise it up, and you'll see where it's starting to work. And then you'll see it every time you check it. It'll get closer and closer, and then eventually you'll see that you got full contact. So at that point, you can start using it for finish honing. You can't stick it in there when it's new. No, don't try that. Okay, so to change the stones out, this is the holder. And to change the stones out, you slide this little window here. There's an in and there's an out. And we want to take it out. So you slide that over to there and press the stone out. Then when you want to press the new one in, you slide it to the window that says in. Now sometimes you'll put them in backwards, and then you get to take them out and throw them away, because these little grooves down in there that bite into this, and that's what holds the stone. And you can only do that one time. If you take it out, then when you try to slide it back in, there's nothing to hold it, because it digs into here. So try to remember to put this here so you don't have to throw it away when you get done. And if you don't get it seated good, well, then you're going to get to throw that one away too. Okay, we've got it set on in. We're holding it down. We think we're there. By the way, you're supposed to kind of look down in there and make sure there's no trash under there. So let's do that too. Okay, I think it's ready. Now you've got a new stone. Next time, now if you look at it when you get done, and if you see a little gap there between the holder and the bottom of that stone, if you see a little gap there, that means you weren't holding it down good, it wasn't seated good, and of course then it's in there like this. Well, that's not going to work, so just throw that away and put another one in. Yes, it takes a lot of stones, but hey, that's just part of it.